Our bread and butter over on this left-hand side is our data pane. We call everything like a pane or a window or a canvas. You'll get to know some of the lingo. But here we have our field names. So in an Excel file, which I'm pretty sure is the most familiar version of data for us all, across that top first row is always a header. So what are our columns names? What is Superstore? Superstore is a sample data set, so none of it's real, but it's a collection of data of orders of office supplies. So we can actually explore on what we're selling. If we drop down product, we can actually see what kind of products we're selling. So if we just bring on category, maybe that might give us some context to what we're looking for. I'm clicking and dragging and I'm dropping it where I want to. I can put it on rows, columns, filters. I can add it to this marks card is what we call this here. So I'm going to drop it onto rows and we can see a list of the categories that we have. So we have furniture, office supplies, and technology. So I believe this Superstore is to kind of furnish an office. So you have your furniture, like I mentioned, like if we add in subcategory, we can see also what's included in those categories. So Tableau is a great way to do some preliminary data exploration, but that's not the only thing it does. We can also make some bar charts. So we have these icons, this ABC, this little hierarchy diagram type icon. We have a little calendar icon. We have a paperclip icon. We have this little Venn diagram icon. And all of these things are actually presented in blue. So blue and green mean two different things in Tableau. If it's blue, it's a dimension is what we call it. So it's what is splitting up your data. And then below this line, we have our green like pound hashtag symbols, which obviously means number. But our green things, as opposed from being blue and discrete, they are green and continuous. So we can take my favorite measure, which is called sales, and I'm clicking and dragging sales, and I'm dragging it onto, dropping it onto columns. So now we see some bar charts. It's pretty easy. I know in Excel sometimes it could be a pain to highlight all the data that you want. Maybe you've missed a line, you don't have all your data, and then you add something in, and then you have to restart from the beginning. This is what Tableau excels at. No pun intended. But what's really cool about Tableau is now you can customize this visual. We can swap the rows and columns, which is not really what I want to do today. But it's really easy to pivot your data in that kind of context of what pivoting is. Let's say we want to color our categories. So instead of having category on our rows, we can drag it over to color and actually just color by category. I don't know why you would want to do this, but it's possible. So now we have orange office supplies and blue furniture and red technology. We can click undo to make sure our the changes we made, we don't want to save. So I'm going to leave this as our category bar chart. I'm going to turn on my labels. I'm going to check mark, show mark labels. And these are sales, so these are dollar amounts. So I'm going to right click the sum of sales, and I am going to format the number. And if I can do this properly, that would be amazing. It's always fun. Oh, is this the font format? Where's the, okay, there we go. So our numbers down here, we can go from automatic to a currency type, and we're going to do a currency custom. And let's say we want to add in, and this is on our scale and not in our pane. As you can see, we're going to go from pane to default. So now we're going to see what actually changes. We're going to go to currency custom, and now we can see that we have more formatting. So we have the dollar sign and we have 2 decimals. I don't really care about decimals. I'm going to get rid of them. And actually, most of my values look like they're in the thousands, so we can actually change it to thousands. And that way, we're kind of lowering our text on the screen. I don't really care too much about the nitty-gritty at this point. I just want to see like a high-level overview. So we're going to call this sheet bar chart. And we're going to make a new sheet to show and demonstrate some of the other chart types that we have. One of my favorite things before joining the information lab to make were maps. I believe in Superstore we have a location field where we can double click on state and province, and we create this weird abstraction of the United States and Canada. If we want to turn it into an actual filled in map, we can click this drop down in the marks card and we can select map. And that's just a solid map of the United States and Canada. Only the United States and Canada are showing up because they are the only locations that we have in the data. So if you had data that was in Mexico or honestly, even Alaska, it would show up in this map, but we don't have that in our data, so it's not going to show. What's good about having a map in your Tableau dashboard is then you can actually drag in a measure onto color and give it some context. So if you select profit and you drag it on top of color and drop it there, you get some more information. Something that's cool about Tableau is it creates tooltips. So if you hover over a data point, so in this case, a state would be a data point. In the bar chart case, a bar is a data point. You see these tooltips that you can customize to give more context and information to each chart. So we can see here that Texas has negative $25,000 in profit. They're not doing too good, but it looks like New York and California might be running for first and second. So I'm going to rename this as map. One of the most critical charts that I make is a series over time. We always want to know what's happening over time. So we have to identify our date column. So I know that order date, first of all, the word date is in there, is a date because it has this little calendar. So I can drag and drop order date onto columns or rows. My favorite is put it in columns so that it's over time on the x-axis. But something really cool that you can do in Tableau to select your date part or your date granularity is by right-clicking and dropping, and it will pop up this menu. It's my favorite little hack because otherwise you're customizing the date every time you drop it in. And I'm going to do an order date continuous. There's a ton of other options that we could spend a whole day on talking about when to use what, but we'll start with order date continuous. And then we are going to want to map the amount of sales that we have over time. That looks crazy. I don't know how anyone's going to read this. So maybe we don't want exact date continuous. Maybe we want it more at the weekly level of detail. So I'm going to click week number and see how it kind of smooths everything out. It's instead of aggregating each point for that exact date and time that it's at, it's now pulling everything into week increments and aggregating them based on a sum to kind of smooth things out. We can see right click. If we change to month, it's even smoother. It's all the same values, but it's just being aggregated at different date levels of detail. So we can leave it at month. This looks fine to me. Again, I just want an overview, and we'll call this line chart. And I will ask Bianca, what time am I at? 5 more minutes. Cool. Let's make a dashboard. So we have our 3 charts, and we have 1 dashboard. We can drag in. I like to keep my line chart pretty long, so it'll get its own section. I'm doing this without containers, so pray for me. I'm going to throw in a bar chart that we made, and I'm going to throw in our map. There we go. Not too bad. Tableau will automatically generate these color legends for you. A lot of times I make custom ones. We don't really need it for now. We're just going to get rid of it. We're going to delete the container. And this is our dashboard. But something that's really cool about Tableau is we can click this little filter button to use as a filter. So this is where Tableau really shines from just an exploratory Excel tool, but becomes this interactive tool and product for you and your teams to use, or for you and your friends to explore. You can click use as filter and something magical happens, where now if I click on New York, the whole rest of my dashboard filters based on New York. So now I can see that bookcases in New York are selling for $23,000. But let's say I actually want to see this on a certain date or maybe a certain year. I'm going to use this time series also as a filter, and I'm going to highlight the last, well, not like that, but I'm going to highlight these, however many points that is, around 10. And it will also now filter this bar chart to see the last 10 months, whatever I've selected. So this is what makes Tableau a Tableau, what makes a dashboard and not just a report. It allows your end users to interact with your data and actually give themselves self-service and answer questions for themselves instead of you answering every little ping that you get throughout the day. So that's Tableau. I think we want to switch over to just quickly talk about Tableau Public, which actually I'm not going to go into. Are we talking about Tableau Public later? I'll just quickly go to Tableau Public. You can make an account here on Tableau Public. I have an account. You can publish your Tableau dashboards. Tableau Public is a free version of Tableau Desktop. So anyone can have an account and publish there and share their visualizations. The Tableau Public homepage is where I spend a lot of my time. We can see the viz of the day. These are always really cool to check out every day, as it implies. And then you can see some trending vizzes to explore and dissect. So something that how I learned Tableau is I click on a dashboard that I think is really cool. I play around with it by clicking on things, hovering, seeing what's going on. And then ultimately, if I can't figure it out, I hit download. And sometimes this Tableau workbook button is not grayed out. And you can download the Tableau workbook and actually explore for yourself to see how things are built. So that's a great way to learn. And I am going to pass it back to Bianca. And thank you all for your time.
Okay, thanks everyone. So next we're gonna have Christina talk about the data fam. She just logged on, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and let her start sharing.
Hi everybody, can you hear me okay?
So I think in person, we need this to be a little bit louder. Can you try again?
Hello.
Perfect.
Yay.
You're good to start sharing as well.
Awesome. I'm hoping that there's not any like back, because sometimes I know that sometimes you get like an echo with some of these systems, like when you're reporting in from somewhere else. So I'll try not to have it. Okay, let me go ahead. This is platform. I feel like every time I use like one of these newer platforms, I'm like, how do I do this? So let me go into my thing here. And if I'm just sharing my window here, I may not be able to see things in the chat. So Bianca, if you don't mind, like maybe we can like wait until the end. And then if people want to pop in and do some Q&A, we should have time for that before we roll into the panel. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Love it. Yay. So I've actually done like a couple of talks like this somewhat recently. So it actually makes perfect sense actually going into Tableau conference to talk a little bit about this, because I think I get a lot of questions from folks that are not in the Tableau community, especially those that, you know, maybe it's their first time going to Tableau conference. Like, who are these crazy people wearing all this like data swag? I don't know who they are. They seem very friendly, but they seem like an odd bunch. So like sometimes they stay on the periphery. So I'm here to kind of give you guys all a little bit of a primer on just the Tableau community programs, and just generally about belonging in the Tableau community. And if you want to get in touch with me afterwards, I have basically moved most of my social stuff to Blue Sky app and the Blue Sky platform. It kind of reminds me of like the Twitter of old. So if you like more just interesting like data viz, like chats and things like that, just follow me. I'm just Christina.Gorga. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn too. I'm somewhat more, I guess, like social on those two platforms than anywhere else these days. I do still have an existing ex Twitter account, but I'm rarely on there now. So that's one of the downsides is I think that the Tableau community is somewhat splintered these days. I think in the Tableau community of old, and I'm going to kind of talk about that, what the Tableau community has been, how we sort of evolved, what's out there now. But the Tableau community of old, which is when I like started back in 2015, almost everybody was solely on Twitter. And that was the way that we sort of engaged with each other. We learned about each other. We became friends too, on a little platform called Twitter. So a little bit about me. For those of you who don't know me, I am a data strategist and enable lead at Booz Allen Hamilton. We are primarily a federal consulting firm, which means that it's been kind of a wild ride lately here down in DC. If you pay attention or don't live in a cave, it has been fun. I am a sausage dog mommy. I have a min pin dachshund mix at home called Abigail. I am also a mom who visits. I have 2 daughters under the age of 5, so God help me.
Hey, Christina, your slides aren't moving.
Oh no. Well, no, it's not. Oh, did it even go beyond the first one?
No, I'm seeing like Microsoft PowerPoint with like the view on the side.
Oh no. This is the problem. I'm wondering if it's, let me escape.
Yeah.
Does this work?
Let's see.
Is this working?
It hasn't popped up yet. No.
Okay, I'm gonna go back into the thing. Like, what can you see from my screen?
The first slide.
Oh my gosh, that's really annoying. Let me just do my full video, like my full screen, because I think that the sharing mechanism on this, I apologize, you all. I know. Thank you, Brian. I spend most of my life in Teams and a couple of other platforms, but not this one. So again, I apologize. I'm just gonna omit this, unshare. You guys can probably see my whole screen. Can you see this now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to stick with this. I apologize, everybody. Trying to remote in and do this is a pain in the, but hey, guess what? We are running on this live and it's okay. Things happen
today.
It's okay. Things happen. So anyways, I basically run on a social battery. If you can't already figure that out, yeah, I don't know how I get through the day without caffeine and just like people in general. It means that also working remotely for me is both a gift and a curse because I really like working with people. And sometimes that involves really wanting to have like social time with people or just random conversations and stuff that I'm like, oh, I really feed off that energy really well. But I also like having my quiet focus time. So that's why I love going to, Tableau user groups, tugs, social events that are around the data community. So if and when I get the chance to do it, I love to go and meet you all in person. And I feel like Emily DePadua is probably there. I feel like it is my job to tell people like what is my zodiac sign. I am a Leo sun, Taurus moon, and a Libra rising. So very much a fire sign in every way, shape, and form. And then I'm always plotting my next adventure, which of course in about 4 or 5 weeks time, I'm going to be in San Diego with a bunch of you. And I'm really excited to see a lot of you in person again. So we're going to go ahead here. And I feel like if we're going to be talking, yep. Okay. I feel like if we're going to be talking about the Tableau community, all we need to go way back. We need to go like super back, like as in like when the tool first started back, and that was in the 2000s. And when the conferences were like maybe 100, 200 people going there. One of the people that was really getting and very passionate about the tool was a guy named Michael Christiani. got so passionate about the tool and the community that he would just spend a lot of his time connecting with other people in the community and saying like, oh, this person does this really cool thing with data, with Tableau, you should hook up with them. And he would basically start organically creating all of these friendships and people that are all working in the same tool together. So it kind of comes to the point of, with the spoke in the wheels, I think everything kind of comes back to Michael Christiani. Michael Christiani is kind of like the Kevin Bacon of the Tableau community. You cannot talk about the Tableau community without Michael Christiani. And that's why for the Vizzies, which is one of our community led award events that we have at Tableau Conference every year, the community award is actually called the Michael Christiani Community Award. And so it's in his name. There's a reason for that. I consider him to be like a servant leader. Unfortunately, Michael is no longer with us. He died in actually 2018. So he was actually, funny enough, my boss at work. So before I joined Booz Allen, I was at a small healthcare analytics and consulting firm called Lewin Group. And Michael was actually my boss, but more than just my boss, he was also my friend. And so like a couple of others in the community that were really impacted by him when he was alive, and then when he was gone, we try and carry on his legacy in a way that we can. And then, of course, you also can't really talk about the Tableau community without talking about the Alyssa Fink. Alyssa Fink was the former Tableau CMO, Chief Marketing Officer in corporate speak, and also just a general legend. She took some very risky things to invest in the community at the forefront of when Tableau was kind of coming into the public view. And one of those risks was saying, hey, we only are at X amount of money. At this point, I think it was like 12 million in revenue. We want to actually start hosting a conference around our community, the customers, people that are actually using the tool. And by actually doing that and making some of those bold moves early on with Tableau is how you've seen the community evolve today. So having the customers talking with the product teams, talking with the community team, it was more than just a tool. It is literally the combination of the bilateral movement between the product, the marketing team, and then the community and customers. And, I feel like that relationship still very much, applies today. If you want to know a little bit more about Alyssa and what she was all about, she hasn't been at the company since I think it was end of 2018 when she retired. And so she is enjoying retirement and being on advisory boards and things like that. So you can find a bunch of really interesting tech interviews with her, but in particular, I want to point out one that's actually an interview with a couple of folks from the Tableau community. It's from 2017, but I feel like it's worth a listen so you can actually kind of understand what Alyssa's thinking was about when they started out the Tableau community and why that was an important part of the product. And so really, after talking about Alyssa, Michael, and a little bit about me, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit more about how to take your career to that next level and how we, as a community, people like Bianca and others at Data+Women NYC, how we can help you. And so one of the ways that you can do that is kind of get hooked into our community hub. And so by no means do you have to do all of the things. Try something and experiment with a little bit and figure out like what works well for you either your learning and your like sort of social networking in the Tableau community. So one of the ways that you can do that, kind of similar to what Bianca was saying, is one of the best ways is to honestly just share your work on Tableau Public. It's one of the best things about Tableau was the fact that they built out Tableau Public as a part of their product. It allows people to not only elevate your work, and you can elevate others doing great work. You can press that good old favorite star button, but you can also share it with other platforms, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Twitter, you name it. And that's a great way to not only share your work, but also share other people's work that you think are doing great stuff. The other thing is to choose data that you're passionate about and get started on Vizzing. If there's a certain topic or certain data that you're really into, I think now like people are really interested in political and like civic duty data. Feel free to like start to go on to GitHub and other data sources that are out there. The nice thing is that the Makeover Monday crew, they have on their website a whole archive of all the years of data that they have. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I don't know where to begin, some of the good old, the community run data challenges are a really good place to start. And also, connect with us that are active Tableau community members. If you look at, X, Twitter, or Blue Sky, and you see a whole bunch of people that say like, Tableau community, Tableau ambassador, Tableau visionary, feel free to like say hello, like DM us, like we don't bite. We're about the friendliest bunch that in the world that I think I've ever met. In tech. So feel free to say hello to us and introduce yourself at Tableau Conference. The other way I think is a more like casual but more specific way that you can get visualization feedback is to join the feedback loop and visualization open hours with Nicole Klassen and Michelle Freeman. Not only are they two of my really good friends in the community, but they have just a very open, literally open office hours that you can sign up for in advance. And you can share either your work, or if you have questions, or you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having this, brain fart, or like this, roadblock with this particular viz. I want to get somebody else's feedback on it. That's a great way to not only, introduce yourself to people that are, who I respect in the community, but also just to be able to, work up that next step. And I've noticed a lot of people that go to these like feedback loop and office hours, they end up, submitting to Iron Viz and a couple of other events like throughout the year. They might get Viz of the Day because they do these kinds of events. So I think putting yourself out there and feeling just ever so slightly uncomfortable is the best way that people learn. And then also another way that you can do this, if you're a little bit more like, I'm kind of shy, but I want to learn more about the really like nitty gritty, like deep dive of the tool. You can kind of gamify your learning experience in the community and connect points with answering questions on the forums. So I didn't mention her name here, but like Felicia Steyer has been making this like big thing on Reddit these days she did a whole challenge last year to do like 365 like different like Reddit questions from like the Reddit like Tableau community. So there's a lot of different ways that you can showcase your skills, like where you feel like you shine best. And I feel like there's just, there are many different paths to, getting involved in the community. I'm not going to show this full video, but if you want to go into the Tableau YouTube, you can find it. And this is a really great sort of synopsis to like, what are the Tableau community leaders? You probably see on LinkedIn, a couple of us say like Tableau ambassador or Tableau visionary. Tableau visionary actually used to call the Zen master, and they had a name change a couple of years ago. And so basically the same thing, just a different name change. But just to kind of give you sort of a synopsis is, we kind of are folded into one or two different groups. Sometimes you can be a Venn diagram of the two of them, but, some people are just like an ambassador. Some people are just a visionary. It really just kind of depends. But you'll kind of see that the Tableau ambassadors are sort of reserved as like a gateway to the community. We're usually hyper-focused on one particular area. Some of us are academic, the educational ambassadors. Got the CRM analytics, which I think will now be called something new because there's a new product in there, new product name. I feel like that one always changes all the time. Don't ask me, ask Salesforce. I can't keep up with it. Tableau Public, Forums ambassadors, data devs, which are like people that create like cool tools and like cool extensions and stuff that you can bring in to Tableau and Tableau Cloud, and then social like me, and then user group leaders. And so we kind of use ourselves as like, we lead with kindness, respect, and genuine interest for lifting up others. So the stuff that I love doing every day. And people like visionaries are usually like super hyper, like very deep dive focused on like all particular aspects of the Tableau tool implementation, and then also some more like nurturing of community stuff. So you'll see sometimes, again, you'll see people that are a little bit of both, but then sometimes you'll see people that are solely visionaries and solely ambassadors. And we basically get to do a lot of fun events by being an ambassador or a visionary. So to kind of give you a sort of synopsis of like, I sort of gone through and like created my own adventure with this. So I launched a new community challenge with a couple of friends in the community that's all about pop culture and genre data, called Data FamCon. I've also contributed to a couple of Tableau campaigns with data, so the IMDb TV as well as movie data. I've also been an Iron Viz judge for the qualifying rounds, and also once for the student edition, which was a lot of fun, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. It was really kind of a joy to see like all the things that people can come up with Tableau, like alone. I'm always like super impressed. I'm like, dang, I can't do that. I can barely even do that in my sleep. So kudos to those that like get through the Iron Viz process, because like, oh man, you're my legends. I love you. And then I've also done a little bit of like user discovery and research studies with the Tableau product and research teams, which is really cool and really nerdy because I love that kind of stuff. And then I've also given talks. I gave talks last year at TC 2024, and I'm also going to be giving an upcoming talk at TC 25. So come and check out the session builder. I'm going to be in there at some point. I think it's on the 16th. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what I'm talking this year. And then of course, my main thing that I like to do, and one of the best parts about my role as an ambassador, is that we get to provide sort of a feedback loop to the Tableau and Salesforce leadership on what's working, what can be improved in the community, things like outreach and things like that. So I really hope that, out of this, you want to, learn a little bit more about, not just like ambassadors and visionaries and like wanting to do that. I think also just opening yourself up to just different opportunities where, we all belong somewhere, I think, in the community is just, I think we also need to acknowledge that everyone doesn't necessarily want to be the social ambassadors or, the party starters. Sometimes people like to shine in different ways. But the most important thing is that we're just here to support you in any way, shape, or form of what that learning process and growth wants to look like for you. And so, I put this out there to like nominate yourself to be an ambassador or visionary. But, by all means, like, and I full disclosure, I do not believe that, just being an ambassador or a visionary means that you are successful. I think that that's just like an icing on the cake thing. It is a completely optional. Some of the brightest people I know in our industry are not any one of those things. So I just think it's more of a matter of like personal taste and commitment and what you want to do and what you want to get out of your engagement with the community. And by all means, you can meet like cool people like, Nicole, myself, Preeti, and Michelle and Lawrence from the Data Fam Con. But I just wanted to put this out there and thank you all for, coming today, supporting the Data+Women NYC, and also just, opening yourself up to new opportunities and new things, because this is a fun crew. I've made some very long-lasting relationships, especially with a lot of the women in the community. And that's something that I can't necessarily say about other tech communities. So Tableau has been at the forefront of really embracing, gender equality and gender equity in tech. And so I really hope that we continue to do that. And just keep on doing what you're doing, Data+Women. Woo!
Thank you for that, Christina. Does anyone have any questions for her before we get started with our panel? Okay, great. So we're gonna get started in 3 minutes. This is your chance to grab a little food, have a bio break, but then please come back. Hi everyone, we're going to come back together. Can I ask Samantha and Dzifa to come up here and sit in the front with me? We're going to do a little Q&A. I'm going to start with some prepared questions. And in the case of that, we're going to have Christina, who's presenting virtually, as you've all noticed, to answer first, just to cut down on lag time. And on the slides, I have a question with the general order of how people are going to respond. So if you ever need help for our panelists as to who this question is for, please feel free to look at this TV on the side. And this is helpful for me as well. So first question, could you introduce yourself and what you do? And along that line, how long have you been using Tableau? How long have you been in data in general? Christina, this is for you first.
Yeah, I feel like I just sort of repeated this so I won't drown on, but I am a data strategist mostly in the healthcare sector. So I deal with the 3-letter health agencies, a lot of my work. So NIH, CMS, FDA, and I have been using Tableau since 2016 in various capacities. Lately, I've had to become a Swiss Army knife and a couple of other different data viz tools out there. But more broadly, I actually now do a lot more data strategy and data governance work, which kind of comes into play with a lot of the other tools that we see in the field. So whether it's like an ETL tool, some of the other embedded analytics, you name it, and then also just more like security and things like that. So how we're actually implementing the tool more broadly, and how are we actually getting value out of that too. And then I also have been in the data field, I would say more or less since like 2013, probably even going back a little bit further, because everything is data. And even if you're doing, basically, because I came back from a cognitive science graduate background. So I've been using data, experimental data in various capacities for almost my entire career. But if you wanted to talk more specifically about data analytics and program evaluation, probably more like 2013. So we're now going on like close to like 12 years of like solidly doing like data work, like data oriented work.
Wow, that's impressive. So next up, this is for Dzifa. Same question.
Hi everyone, my name is Dzifa Amexo. I currently work at Tableau as a social media and content senior specialist. But before that, and I've been in this role for like 7 months, so pretty new. I've been using Tableau for around 5-ish years. I started around 2019 in college. I studied finance and analytics, took one Tableau course, and I was like, yes, like put it on my resume. I know Tableau. I went to the career fair, I was like, yes, I can build a dashboard. Literally, I just knew how to build a bar chart. But once I saw like the appetite, everyone was like, yeah, like Tableau, like data analytics. I was like, okay, I should like actually learn this. COVID happened. I really just went head into the community, built a Tableau public portfolio, and then ended up getting a role through the community, worked a few years as a consultant, and now I work at Tableau doing social media and content. So I've been in the data field for around 4 or 5-ish years if we went to 2020, 2019, give or take. And yeah, it's been quite the journey. I feel like I'm learning new things every day in the data, Tableau, and to Christina's point, I think everybody is a data person. So I could say like back in high school when I was taking statistics or just like doing things in college, like when I was an RA, like there was data involved when you're making a Google form. there's data involved. So I think it's really cool just to look back on your journey and just reflect and see like where data is, because we all have it as a part of our journeys.
And then I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So I'm Samantha Fitzsimmons. I have been using Tableau since 2023, so I think I might be the newest person on this panel, maybe 2023, the newest person to the data field in this panel. I think I've been working professionally in data for about a year and a half. I'm currently a data analyst or business intelligence person for a company called Bus Patrol. I'm currently just doing a 6-month contract for them. They're a company that installs cameras into school buses, and those cameras record events of people passing the stop arm that comes out of the school bus. So I analyze their data, and yeah, that's kind of just what I've been doing.
Have you also been using Tableau just since 2023 as well?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for that intro.
Thanks.
We're gonna have some more like specific questions about each person as well. So the next question I have for everyone was to describe your first Tableau viz. I'm expecting something that looks like probably what Juliet made earlier today. And I have some images as well for everyone to look at. So first, Dzifa, this is your first visualization. I can see you're embarrassed.
Yes.
Would you like to describe this for us?
Yeah. If you guys say this outside of this place, I will deny it. This is not that. It was on my Tableau public. I always never forget where you started. This was my first like public viz. I couldn't find the one that I did back in college, which is probably a good thing. But this was a Makeover Monday. And I remember back in the day, they used to do like viz reviews. So basically you would submit your viz to get reviewed, and then they'd like give you feedback. And I literally, like, one of the feedback points was that like the numbers were wrong. Like the data that I was using, just like what they're just doesn't make sense. Like, that's like really crazy because it's ugly and the numbers are wrong, so it's bringing nothing to the table. But I learned a lot. Okay, always check your numbers, like check your data, make sure it makes sense. And also like the colors, like it's just all red. I really cannot. It's not telling any sort of story. So very embarrassing, but again, it's cool. I still keep it on my public portfolio to see like that was my first viz, and now like I know how to make a dashboard that looks good and the numbers are correct. So it's kind of cringe, but it's okay.
And that's why I've shown it to everyone, because some of us are just starting, and this is where Dzifa started. So, you know, if you can beat this, you could probably be working at Tableau in just a couple of years.
Yes, you need a referral also out here.
All right, next up, another special first viz from Samantha.
That's so good.
That's pretty freaking great, man.
Glad you started with me.
So that was, I think, my first real viz. I don't know if I cheated, but it was based off of a storyboard that I made about COVID. And so, yeah, my first dashboard was about COVID. I use this to actually apply to the data school here at the information lab. And it was, my first application viz. And I think one of the first pieces of feedback I got was that this is also not telling us anything. So yeah, I guess, it's kind of colorful and maybe like kind of nice to look at, I guess, but it really doesn't tell you much about COVID. It just gives you a bunch of statistics and bar charts and pie charts and things about COVID and how it compares to pneumonia and the flu. So yeah, so that was my first viz. The background is like an actual map, which I thought I was being really cool and creative, but then when I actually had to present it for my application viz, it kept zooming in and out so that the map would like disappear or get really, really big. So we all start somewhere.
Christina, I don't have a slide here for you.
Yeah, it's okay. Just go on to my Tableau public. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm pretty sure that it's like a Michelin star thing that I just pulled together with like Google Sheets data. It's pretty red. It's like Michelin red. It's bad. Just, you know what? I will say this, and to Devisa's and Sam's point is, one of the best things that Mark Braidburn, which if you don't know Mark Braidburn, he's usually in the Iron Viz as a sous chef, as they call him, but he's also a solution engineer that actually used to be like a Tableau ambassador and he still is very much involved in the Tableau community. But one of the first things he ever told me is don't take down your first couple of visits in Tableau Public because you want to see growth. And I think that's the most important thing. Is each and every one of us, if we've been in the community for some time, everyone is showing growth. I could even tell you, Michelle Freeman, Emily, who's probably there, all of us have pretty pretty basic looking things, out of the gate. And that's okay. You want to see that growth. And that's, that shows a sign of learning and initiative. And I think people are super embarrassed about putting their stuff out there. And I think it's important to kind of know where we came from and then where we are now.
Yeah, I love that. I personally have some things on my Tableau Public that I would rather keep hidden, but I know I would want to look back on.
Easily.
It's more of a Dzifa level than it is a Samantha level. All right. So next question for everyone. So we'll start with you, Christina, again, which is, what are some non-technical skills that are helpful for data professionals?
Ooh, I would say managing up and managing expectations on what can be done. I think a lot of us, especially starting out, think, oh, I can do that and take, a certain amount of time with certain tasks that happen or need to happen. But I think just acknowledging and telling yourself, hey, I'm going to tell people these things will be done, but, sort of under what do we call it? Underselling and over delivering. So telling people you will have something done by X time, cool. But then, maybe coming forward to them with, oh, by the way, I developed this, secondary documentation to go along with this thing that I built, basically putting into whatever products that you're delivering with work, telling people that you're going to come with deliveries with them with additional documentation, I think is super helpful. Over delivery is always helpful. I think as you go on in your career, also just managing up expectations of what things will require more research or which things will require more, either workarounds or additional components or teams or dependencies that need to happen in order for said things to be done, I think is a really crucial learning skill. People skills in general, I think are underrated and highly motivated for people to put into their work, because I've been in some work environments now, case closed. I work in consulting, so it's a very different beast and an animal than maybe some other industries. But I will say is that all the best technical leaders that I've worked with, Booz Allen and beyond, a lot of them use that same approach of, under promising and over delivering when it comes to what can be done.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I even think that some of these non-technical skills are the ones hardest to learn, which is why I've highlighted these. So Samantha, you're up next.
For me, I think a non-technical skill that has been really helpful for me as a data professional is being able to explain something technical to someone who is not technical. I'll actually talk a little bit more about my background for one of the next questions, but that's something that I've had to learn in my previous career. It's actually my second career. And so that's a really, really valuable skill, because oftentimes when you're trying to deliver something for another person, they're probably someone who can't do it themselves, otherwise they would. And so if they can't do it themselves, then they probably don't know the jargon or the vocabulary, that's all the concepts that are needed in order to deliver the thing that you're trying to give them.
Yeah, great answer. Dzifa?
Such a good answer. I also love being on panels because I always learn from other people. I'm like, oh my God, yes. Plus, I know what Christina said also. So I'm going to steal a little bit of what you said. I think communication is probably one of the most important skills. And from the sense of, I also have a consulting-ish background for a year and a half, specifically in data. And a large part of being consultant is scoping. So you go in and talk to a client, you know nothing about the client. And in having conversations, 95% of the time, what people think they need is not actually what they need. So you need to be able to kind of sometimes push back, but also communicate hey, you want this dashboard for this, but you actually need to solve this problem. So I think practicing that was something like I didn't know how to do when I first started consulting. But going through and practicing, like thinking about good questions to ask, being curious, like all those things are so important because it's not just about like building the dashboard. And the second thing, which is maybe like a little bit of a hot take, but being open. And I mean that in the sense of data and just tech in general changes so fast. Like working at Tableau, guys, things change so fast, like every day, multiple times in a day. And I think you have to be open and flexible to things that are coming, like AI. That's like a big thing now. We have a lot of AI products coming out. And I think myself included, like when it first came out, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to learn this. This is going to steal my job. I literally use ChatGPT every day to like write the social copy. But then I had to reframe my mindset and be open about it and be like, okay, how can AI make me better at my job? So this is just like a specific example of AI. But I do think in general, in your data career, you should be open. Like if I wasn't open to, I know try new things, I have this job. I didn't know anything about social media, but I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be open, I'll try it. So I think that's probably the best non-technical skill, communication and being open.
Yeah, thanks for that. I personally, when I'm on a panel, which doesn't happen often, I think, oh, I should have said that. So I'm glad you have a much more positive view of that. Just building off another person's answer. All right, we're gonna start some targeted questions. So Samantha, like you mentioned, you have a background in something else as your second career. I'd love to hear more about that. So how did you get into data? And actually, as a lot of people have mentioned, we use data before our data job. So how did you use data before your first data job?
Well, prior to this, I was doing something in many ways quite different than being a data analyst. I was a speech therapist. I worked with adults and I worked with children. And I would say the way that I used data in my job was, in many ways, it's kind of a lot like consulting, and I can explain how. When I would meet a patient and their family and try to understand sort of what their problem was, I would kind of collect data in a lot of different ways. I would collect data during sort of what I would call like a patient or a family interview and understand, you know, what their needs are and what their problem is and kind of what they're sort of hoping to get out of maybe potentially the first visit that they have with me. And then with whatever time I have left for that appointment, I would do some kind of more of like a quantitative assessment. So I might give them some kind of test to help understand what their communication skills are or what their cognitive skills are. And then during that quantitative test, I would also try to maybe make some observations of even just kind of what they were doing when they were giving me the answers. Did I think they gave me, you know, the wrong answer because they didn't know it, or did they just want to finish the test because they didn't want to be there? There could be lots of reasons. So that was kind of a way that I would collect my data. And then afterwards, I would have to write a report about it. That would be reviewed by the doctor, maybe the family, or maybe it would be sent to a school or something like that. And kind of maybe basically make that data make sense to someone else. So I would say that those skills have, like I was saying before, those skills have really been very helpful in this new profession that I have, because I'm taking all of these numbers that may or may not mean something to someone and then explaining why they should care about them and then what they should do about them.
So how did you get into your first data job?
I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. How did I get into data? So I mean the real answer would be that I did a boot camp. I did an online boot camp, and it was called Career Foundry. I considered a lot of different boot camps, and I chose that one because they said that they would give you your money back if you didn't get a job in 6 months. So that was and it was one of the cheapest. So that's basically why I chose it. And that's where I learned Tableau and some other different tools and things like that. And I mean, and that's basically it, I think. But I think kind of maybe if I'll take a couple more minutes. I mean, I think what really is, I think, more interesting about my story is just sort of kind of like sort of what sort of let me kind of through my first career path and things like that. When I was a kid, I never really felt like I was good. I never felt good at math. I was not good at math. And one of my earliest memories of doing math, or kind of one of my worst memories of math, was When I was in 5th grade, I was around 10 years old, and we had to take quizzes every week. I remember it was every Friday we had a quiz, and when we were done with our quizzes, we would kind of grade them as a class. So the teacher would go, we would just figure out what questions we had right, what we had wrong, and then when we were finished, we had to say our grade in front of the class. So every Friday, I got to tell my whole class that I got like a D or an F or whatever, like every single week. And I never got made fun of for it. It wasn't like a big deal or anything. My parents were mad at me for it. It just was what it was. But it's a very demoralizing experience to go through that. And so then going into 6th grade, or when I was in 5th grade, going to 6th grade, you take like a placement exam to figure out where you're going to be in math. And that basically informs the rest of school, middle school, high school, until you graduate. And of course you can move up or down, but that basically informed my path. So I ended up in a decelerated math class, and that's where I stayed for the rest of my schooling. When I was in high school, I would approach my teacher about maybe kind of moving up a level to kind of more of the average level, because I had gotten A's the whole time. And my teachers always told me that like I was better off being in the decelerated level. And I kind of just sort of went with it because I figured, well, they're the experts. So I don't want to put myself through torture if I don't have to. If like, this is okay, it's fine. And something about decelerated math classes is that you do learn concepts slower, which can be helpful for people who need to go more slowly, but you also learn less. You do. And so there were lots of things that I just never learned. And so then at the end of high school, when you're expected to figure out what you're going to do for a career, what I knew about myself was basically what I'd experienced and what people had told me and kind of the messages that I had gotten. So I knew that I was bad at math, good at spelling, and I liked to help people. So I was like, I will become an English teacher. So then my freshman year, I was just, or my first year of college, I was just kind of taking the regular classes that you take when you're in your first year of college in the US, which is not much. And I started to kind of realize that I did not like to read books or write papers about them. So I figured being an English teacher was probably a bad idea because I didn't think I'd be able to motivate students to do something that I didn't want to do. So then I changed my major and found speech pathology. And I thought, well, that kind of sounds like teaching English, which it's not. But, and that's out of respect to teachers as well, but it's not, but that's kind of just what I did. But I think, something that is just something to think about is by kind of just eliminating all jobs that involved any kind of more challenging math, I eliminated a lot of career opportunities for myself. And I made that decision based on, like I said, my experiences and kind of what I had been told throughout my life. And so I became a speech therapist, and I guess was pretty successful, and it just kind of got to a point where I worked in healthcare, and I just was, I would say, almost burned out from the beginning, but it got to the point where I had to change because changing became less of a want and was absolutely a need. So when at one point in my career, I actually lived in San Francisco, and I had all these friends who were in tech. And it was just this thing that just felt so unattainable, and this thing that I had heard about, but this thing that I would never get to do because I never majored in math. I never did a STEM, whatever. I just was me. And then at the end of my career, I was at this crossroads of like, I need to do something else. And so basically, eventually, I landed on this data analytics thing, and I was just kind of like, well, am I bad at math because I was told I was bad at math, or am I bad at math because I am? And I don't completely know still. It's still a challenge. But I just was like, I've worked very hard and I have a lot of grit, and I'm just gonna give this a shot, and I did. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Thank you. That mic job. Okay, that was so good.
Next question for Dzifa. Now you have to follow
I
that.
know, very tough act.
So you've mentioned already that you were in consulting before, also using Tableau. Now you actually work at Tableau. So what's that like?
Whew, working at Tableau. It's actually like so insane in a great way. Like I love my job. I feel really blessed to like work at the tool that I've been raving about for the past 4 or 5 years. But I think the interesting thing just in terms of like trends, like my first career as a consultant, I went to school for finance and analytics. Then I came out and I was like, I hate finance, now I have to do analytics. And then I applied to my consultancy job with the Tableau public portfolio and didn't know how to like write a calculation at all. I was like, I can build a amazing makeover Monday, but don't ask me to like build or like write SQL, or I didn't even know Tableau Server, Tableau Cloud was. So I learned a ton at my consultancy job. And I think learning the product, like knowing exactly what goes into a server to cloud migration and how painful that is. Now when I'm creating content, and so a little bit about like what I actually do day to day, I'm in charge of all of our social channels, so LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And so the main mission of Tableau Social is to educate, inform, and engage. So when I'm creating content about Tableau Server, Tableau Cloud, I'm thinking about like, oh, like what is educational about Tableau Server? Like for the analyst, like what is something in terms of content that would be educational for them? So I feel like I have this really unique perspective that I bring to the table at Tableau in my day-to-day job because I've worked with the tool. And I think now that I'm 7 months in, I see that as like a strength. But when I first started, oh my gosh, the imposter syndrome was insane. I literally have never, like back in college, I studied finance and analytics. Initially, I was finance and marketing. And I dropped marketing. I was like, whoa, marketing is like way too creative. I cannot do that. And now I'm in a field that literally like is marketing. Like part of my job is to create like creative copy and create things in Canva. So when I first started, I was like, wow, like I don't feel like I deserve to be here because I don't know marketing. I'm not good at it. And everyone was consistently telling me like, you know, Tableau, like you bring so much like special sauce to the table. You're an ambassador, blah, blah, blah. And it's still for literally probably up until like 6 months in was I like, oh, okay, like I actually do bring like something unique to the table. So I think the takeaway here is that even my first job, like I didn't have all the skills. This job, I didn't have all the skills, but I was open. I said yes. And I think now having that analyst perspective, when we're talking about certain things, I can say like, hey, like this doesn't necessarily make sense from a product perspective. Here's a suggestion about what I would say. If we're talking about community, as a former, I'm still part of the community, but like as a former ambassador, I lead the social ambassador program. Shout out to Christina. So like I know some of the challenges and like how it feels to have to juggle all these things. So I think it does make me a little bit more empathetic to being on the other side, but also it is really interesting just to see like how different things are when you're in the community versus on the business side. But at the end of the day, I think like community and just helping people see, understand, and act on data, like that is our shining star. And sometimes it can feel a little crazy, but if you like hold on to like your mission and that thing, I think it grounds me and reminds me of like why I do what I do. And I genuinely do love it. It is a really cool role.
Well, Dzifa, that's really interesting that you say that, because I think, you know, maybe what you do, you know, in some other companies, I don't know how much, you know, the community team probably talks about this, but in many other product focused companies, they talk about people that are like what they call dev relations or like dev advocates. And so like for you in your role, like where I see you really sort of in between the two is because you really understand how to use the product. But then you also have that people like advocacy aspect too. And a lot of times I see people that do really well in those dev relations roles have both of those components like honed down. So I feel like for you, like you do a really good job of kind of meshing those two together, whereas, you know, maybe in other community team members maybe don't have that special sauce. So I think people advocacy is a huge part of it, like really understand like how are people actually using this and how can we showcase that with the stuff that we're actually doing really cool stuff at Tableau. So kudos to you, because I feel like there hasn't really been, at least to date, as far as I know, before you joined, there weren't nearly as many people that were actually using the tool on the community team. So I think that that was a really bold choice, but a good one on the fact that they brought you in. So I think, you know, having more people that are on the community side and on the marketing teams that actually use the tool is like a no-brainer at all.
Thank you. And I will also say, like, working at Tableau, I love my team. They're so amazing. And there are like so many other people at play in the background that are like learning and enabling. Andy Cockrave and a ton of other people. So I'll just like shout out the team. Like we do a lot, and it's a tough role, but we all love it, and we are striving to like know the product more and just bring that to the table. And I appreciate those kind words. And I'm like talking to this owl thing, like I'm looking at you, but.
I'm like, I want to like give you a hug right now. I want to give this whole entire room a hug.
I thought you were coming to New York, and I was so excited. So my boss was like, "Christina's gonna be in New York tonight. I can't wait to give her a hug."
No, not.
So cool.
I wish I could be in two places at once. This is like where those things in Star Trek, like having that, like just being able to like levitate between the two. Like, let's make that happen.
I wish I could have flown you out, Christina, but we don't have the budget for that. Dzifa.
Oh man.
But it's great to have what sounds like an insider on the Tableau team.
I'll try my best, guys. Rob the ATM. No, I'm kidding. Oh my god, this is recorded.
All right, last question. Last prepped question for Christina. You're extremely active in the Tableau community. I don't know if we mentioned exactly all the things you do. I think a 4-time social ambassador, running multiple user groups, whether internally or externally. So how have you felt the impact of those connections in your own analytics journey?
That's a really good question. Mostly like where I'm most passionate about is reaching out to people that have done something kind of like Samantha, where you've had an entirely different career, and then you just make that personal contact with that person and figure out what are their like special skills, and being able to like acknowledge and see that in other people, like what makes them awesome at what they do. And hey, guess what? Like me, like I didn't come from a business intelligence background. To be honest with you, most of us didn't really come from that if we were like, basically born in the 80s or even in the early 90s for that matter. Like data science programs were never a formal like education thing. So I think for a lot of us, a lot of that organic learning just kind of happened. And a lot of it just happened because we made those people connections along the way. And what I get told time and time again, it's like, Christina, because you introduced me to so-and-so people, that made me be able to like start this journey. And so I get very like emotional about that, because I'm like, oh my God, like just because I like, said like, hey, like meet this awesome person. They're like really into Star Trek. And oh, by the way, they're really into data. The fact that I just did like just that soft, like warm touch thing means so much to people. So like definitely, just making like those social touches with like other people, like recognizing like the sparkle in others is like really what's made this journey like so wonderful for me. And I will say it uplifts me when like things are going like not so great, like AKA like right now, like it's not so fun right now in the Washington DC area. But I will say like everything that I've seen from people that work in like data or like data focused work that's really, they're passionate about it. They want to make the world a better place. And I think a lot of us that have like a very like mission forward thinking process with working with data, I think that making those people connections along the way and helping people grow their network is like one of the best, like, it's like one of those like soft warm blankets that I can like kind of just like take along with me. And then like in terms of like, how do I start people on their Tableau journeys? Like, honestly, I do quite a bit of different kinds of training. I do a lot of times more like tool agnostic stuff. I do a lot more on like the data storytelling and kind of like just building out like your own like COE and things right now. That's really my focus of, basically more broader like strategy and enablement work. And what I find is that people kind of gravitate towards not so much a tool necessarily, but really like what is their favorite thing that they like to focus on. So whether that's like they really want to focus on color or they really want to focus on mapping. And I basically say, you know what, find something that you're like really, really interested in and take a deep dive in it. And then letting those people sort of like fly and then like show, providing that space for them to showcase their work as they're moving and as they're practicing their craft is really, really important important. And I think the best thing I could tell people is, you know, trying to build open and safe spaces for people to share their work with you. I think that there are certain groups within the Tableau community that are doing a fantastic job of doing that. I think I mentioned that earlier about Nicole and Michelle's like feedback loop and this open office hours. Efforts like that are really like a momentous thing for people to actually sort of gravitate towards. And if that is something that you want to do, definitely reach out to them. But then also just more broadly is like, hey, if you find like a connection between somebody, you really love their Tableau public work, you know, reach out to them, say like, hey, like, how did you like solve this particular kind of problem? I remember even just like a year or two ago, I read it. I think I reached out to Dennis Cow, and you know, he's one of my, you know, acquaintances in the Tableau community. And I reached out to him like, how did you do this freaking thing on like this LA map? Because he had this really cool sort of like what I kind of call like 80s synthwave like color scheme that he did with the map layers. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, I want to learn how to do this. And so he just like popped on a call with me and just did some screen sharing. I'm like, dude, you have no idea like how cool this is like, one, you're just like an awesome person. And two, like you would spend like 15 minutes with me in the morning before your day job to just do this with me. And so that's the biggest thing. It's just like being generous, you know what I mean, to a point with your time with others in the community that are like starting out. And also for those of us that have been doing this for a while, we're all still learning too, is, you know, never stop learning. Even if you've been using this for a number of years, as I have, you will never stop learning.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thought to have. I'm definitely always learning from the community. Like whenever I see something new, as Juliet showed on like the trending, I click on it, I try to download it, I try to recreate it. And so what I'm hearing from you, Christine, is that if someone in the room or online wanted to message you and was like, hey, I need you to walk me through how you built this, you'd be open to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Come hang out with me, like in a virtual capacity, but also like too, if you're coming to Tableau conference, you can come up to me. Don't be shy.
Oh, and speaking of social touches, that's how I met Christina. Just right before Tableau conference last year, she just came up and like was talking to people, just mingling between groups, and that's how I met her.
Aw. Well, I remember meeting you, Juliet, and I remember meeting Bianca too last year. So I remember meeting both of you fantastic ladies, and actually a bunch of folks from the InfoLab NYC crowd. So you guys all came in together to various like events and parties. So I was like, oh hey, it's the NYC crew. So I'm so glad that I think it was Tabitha that introduced us. So thank you, Tabitha.
She's in the room.
Hi.
Great. I think that's a wonderful way to end our night because we are at time. If you do have questions, I think you can just come up to someone or send them a message over LinkedIn. I just have one last message, which is that we're going to be raffling off 2 gift cards. So if you checked in with Tabitha, if you're in person, you are eligible and we'll reach out to you. If you are online and you logged in to watch this, you are also eligible. So there's no action needed. We will randomly pick 2 people and you will be emailed a $25 Tableau gift card. 2 winners. All right, thank you everyone. And here are our QR codes. If you want to follow us on LinkedIn, you want to follow us on the user group site. Thank you, and thank you for coming, and good night.
Thank you, ladies. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Christina.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
She's amazing. Like, okay, we'll FaceTime you because so you can know experience. Yeah, it's just so much showing your stories, like so inspiring. Thank you for having Thank you for having us. This is so fun. Like, I just like love like learning, like hearing these journeys. Christina was saying, I was like, wait, I do need to manage it. Like, that's really relevant right now. It's expectations. We'll see you. You're going to be in San Diego. And I will be
coming here once a quarter, no season, like we said. Online and in person, no season.
I love it.
Yeah, you already made. And yeah, just the vibes are back. You're doing an amazing job. Like, I know how hard running through are, so you killed it. You should have. And the other things you're going to share are contact info or anything. But feel free to. I can send you a link if that's easier. Oh, what? Oh, I mean, don't tell me twice. Listen, I'm like such a snacker. Like, I love this
Did we? You're good.